How's it going, everybody? I am DJ Riley, one of the hosts from Boys on the Bench, and I am back. I had a little bit of a vacation. I went to the UK, visited London and Northern Wales, and it was such a great time. But I'm glad to be back doing my top 5 NBA picks that I have for you today on Pi Day 314. So, anyways, though, before we jump into these picks that I have for you today, I always want to say make sure you're checking out the comment in the description below, because down there you will find some links, and that is going to take you directly to Daily Grind Fantasy, which will hear me reference throughout these picks. And guys, all it is just positive EV, and the odds that we are getting from these bets, because guys, positive EV is one of the most profitable sports betting things that you can do long term. So you need to make sure that you're checking them out. But also in the description, you will find a link to our X profile where all of these picks are posted 100% free, so you don't need to stress out about it. But we're always going to start with our pick of the day. So let's go ahead and jump into our pick of the day. And that is OG Anunoby going over 18.5 points plus rebounds plus assists. Does have a one-game history versus this Portland Trailblazers team, where we saw him on January 9th go for 27 points plus rebounds plus assists on 29 minutes of play. So he cleared this line very easily in his last matchup as a Nick versus this Portland Trailblazers team. Now, Daily Grind Fantasy is giving this a 53.7% chance of hitting with an average juice of minus 137. So again, if you're new to Daily Grind Fantasy or even new to this channel, that magic number that we're looking for from Daily Grind Fantasy is that 54%. So we're getting 53.7% because it's that odds of minus 137. So we're getting very good odds across multiple sports books here. Recent performances, though, he's hit this line in 4 out of his last 5 and 8 out of his last 10. And even if we go look at his last 15, he's hit this in 11 out of his last 15 games, which is 73%. So he's hit this line in roughly 80% of his games across 5, 10, and now 15 games. So he's been doing this very effectively. Now, also what he's been doing very effectively is shooting the ball. He has now made 45% of his shots or better in 8 out of his last 9 games, while also shooting the ball 11 plus times in 7 out of those 9 games as well. This is all that he really needs to do in order to get this done, because he shot 12 field goal attempts in their last matchup versus the Trailblazers, and he made 9 out of those attempts, and he cleared this line quite easily, again, hitting 27 when he only needed 19. He also has a potential for high rebounds versus them, because he faces a team that is now middle of the pack in the Portland Trailblazers, who allow the 15th most rebounds in all of the NBA. And just like every other position, it's very highly variable. But I think that he has a very good potential at hitting a high rebound mark today. But alone, I think that his points, he's due for a lot of points in this matchup. Portland versus a small forward position, though, they do pretty well versus this position, giving allow the 10th least points plus rebounds plus assists to the small forwards. But nonetheless, he's been playing lights out here recently over his last 5, 10, and 15 games. He dominated them in their most recent matchup, and we're getting very good positive EV odds from Daily Grind Fantasy. So definitely love him, and that is my pick of the day. But let's move on, and that is Amen Thompson going under 11.5 rebounds plus assists. Does not have a head-to-head matchup versus this Washington Wizards team, but if we look at what Daily Grind Fantasy is giving us, it's a 53.3% chance of hitting with an average juice of minus 135. So again, not too far from that 54%, which we would really love to have. And if we look at recent performances, we can see that he's hit this under in 5 straight and even 9 straight. But he missed it. He's hit 9 out of his last 10, but he's hit this in 9 straight games. I think that this line has been a little bit inflated because Sengun is out, and they're expecting high rebounding numbers for Amen Thompson today. However, I do think that this line is still a little bit too inflated, considering he's only hit this line in 15 out of 46 possible games this season. And I think a big part of this is because of Amen's assist numbers. We can see that they've continued to remain low, as he hasn't cleared more than 3 assists in each out of his last 10 games, which really just leaves his rebounds to be left. And if we look at how Washington does versus the point guard position, they've only allowed 4 out of the last 15 point guards to rack up 7 plus rebounds versus them. And his line is currently set at 7.5 rebounds, which they are still heavily favoring the under on that as well. Now, Washington versus his point guard position, rebounds plus assists, they do allow the third most, but it's hard to imagine that Amen Thompson is going to see a ton more minutes than he typically does in this game, alone. So I really love the positive EV odds that we're getting from Daily Grind Fantasy, a 53.3% chance. Now, moving on to the next pick that I have for you, and that is Kyle Lowry going over 4.5 assists. Does have a 1-game history versus this Milwaukee Bucks team as a 76er, and that came on February 25th, where he only had 3 assists on 21 minutes of play. Daily Grind Fantasy, however, is giving this a 53.2% chance of hitting with an average juice of minus 133. Now, if we look at his recent performances, he's done very well, hitting 4 out of his last 5 and 6 out of his last 10. But a lot of those games are without Tyrese Maxey in the lineup. But he is expected to be back into this game, considering he played in his last game as well, which means that Lowry's minutes are expected to drop back into that 20 to 23-minute range, where we typically saw him with Tyrese Maxey back in the lineup. However, I still like him in this position because I think he's definitely found his role on this team as being a passer. Now that he's again hit this in 5 out of his last six, even with that limited time, because we saw him hit this in his last matchup versus the Knicks on only that 21 minutes of play. Now, other sports books are also favoring this over as well, with 6 books that we can see here are currently offering this with odds of minus 130 or greater, which is again why he's getting such a high percentage odds to hit from Daily Grind Fantasy of that 53.2%. Now, Milwaukee versus the point guard position, assists, they allow the 11th least, so they are fairly good at allowing low numbers for assist-wise. But again, I think that Kyle Lowry, how he's played these last 5 to 6 games, has been very dominant, and I expect that to continue for today. But let's move on to the next pick that I have for you, and that is Fred VanVleet going over 12 and a half rebounds plus assists. Does not have a head-to-head matchup versus this Washington Wizards team. So if we look at what Daily Grind Fantasy is giving us, it's a 53.7% chance of hitting with an average juice of minus 137. So again, flirting with that 54%. Recent performances, however, he's hit this in 3 out of his last 5 and 4 out of his last 10. So he's definitely playing good here recently over his last 5, not so much over his last 10. Now, really where I like VanVleet in this matchup is his assist numbers continue to be crazy throughout the month of March. He's now had at least 7+ assists in games that he's played in March, with 3 of those games being double digits. Not to mention, he now faces a Washington Wizards team that allows the most assists in all of the NBA with 30 per game. His rebounding numbers have a lot of variability, just like every other guard in the league, but he does sit around 4 rebounds per game this season. So if he gets that 3 or 4 rebounds, I think that he easily clears it, because I expect high assist numbers versus this bad Washington Wizards team. Because if we look at how Washington does versus his point guard position, rebounds plus assists, they allow the 3rd most in all of the NBA. But that does bring us to our last pick of the day, and that is Tyus Jones going under 22.5 points plus rebounds plus assists. So we're staying in this game. Does not have a head-to-head matchup versus this Houston Rockets team. But if we look at what Daily Grind Fantasy is giving us, it's a 50.1% chance of hitting with an average juice of minus 118. So we're not really getting good odds here at all. It's an even 50-50 split from Daily Grind Fantasy. All of the books kind of are coming in at the same thing, not really getting any extra juice one way or the other. Tyus Jones, though, where I really like him in this matchup, he does have just random games where he pops off for 30 plus PRA, but other than that, he really sits around that 18 PRA on average. Houston, however, has only allowed 4 out of the last 6 point guards to hit their under, indicating that they're doing very well versus this point guard position here of lately, although they don't do very well versus point guards throughout the season, where they've allowed the 8th most. Jones, however, has struggled to shoot here recently, where you see him shooting less than 45% in 7 out of his last 10 games, but now he faces a top 10 defense in all of the NBA. So don't love him to go over 22.5, so that's why I'm taking him on the under. So anyways, these are my last picks. Also, make sure you are taking that James Harden over 3.14 points on today's slates, giving us that 25 times multiplier. But outside of that James Harden play, these are my top 5 plays. Make sure you're subscribing to this channel, hitting that notification bell, and getting notified anytime these videos are dropping, because they are coming out daily. Also, don't forget to drop a comment in the comments below. Let me know which of these picks you're tailing, which ones you're fading, which one I should be most excited about or scared about. Anyways, though, best of luck to y'all, and let's have a good day. I'm back in the States, and I'm looking for a dub today. Let's get it. I'll see y'all tomorrow.